I was on a bike ride recently, and I passed one of those places, those little industrial streets that exist all around this great nation. And there's just factories back there. But I guess not just factories, because there's also a bunch of gates. And they usually say something along the lines of no trespassing, loading only, visitors not allowed. And there's very, I don't know, um, intimidating auras around these places. And it got me thinking. I was thinking, well, first of all, why do we build stuff like this? Especially because this is where the raw materials, either imported or created by our workers, are sent to become the products that we use. This is an essential part of the cycle of materials, the creation of products, the central part in the labor, cycle of labor, etc., etc. And so I was wondering why we were so secretive, so cagey about all of this stuff. And yeah, it got me to thinking, especially as I was biking around there, which, even though I was in an area completely accessible to the public, felt entirely like a transgressive act. I was, um, I was being looked at by workers, by people walking into their cars. The incessant beeping of uh, those trucks, it really got to me. So I decided to call a friend over, Dr. Reginald Quimby, and ask him what he thought. And here's that interview. Hello, could you state your name and address for the fans at home?
Yes, my name is Dr. Reginald Quimby. My address is 1717 Brickfield Road. It's a small two-story mid-century modern thing. You can't really miss it. The walls are painted bright green.
Mm-hmm.
And I am a professor of culture and cultural studies at the University of South Albania.
Of course. Now, could you tell us a little bit about the relationship between private property under capitalism and the repression of the proletariat?
Do you mean to say the repression or the oppression? That's a very important distinction.
I mean to say the repression.
Repression is a very interesting topic, especially as it relates to private property. Puritanism rather, took hold in this country very early on, just after the first contact, as it is known in some particular fields. And the obsession with private property really began there. The idea that our human bodies, are the private property of God and all his heavenly kingdoms, really sort of brought forth this idea of private property ownership as a system of repression. The Puritans, as we know, were quite repressed.
Of course. And how does that manifest itself in the modern day?
Well, I would argue that Puritanism has never really gone away in this country, except for a brief period of 1834, which I will talk about at some point. But, we still see this emphasis on ownership, the American ethos, newness. And still today, I can go into the shop and buy a new pair of spectacles, and I own it. But can any of us really say we own things under a capitalist system? Under, this theocracy that we live in, this America, this Puritan America, where God will descend one day and take away all worldly possessions? I think it would be a mistake to say that private property leads to repression, for indeed it is public property that leads to repression. The repression of God and the repression of morals.
I see. So then would you disagree with the idea that the fact that industrial locations of industry are often fenced off or you know excluded from public property. Would you say that has any relation towards the effort by a capitalist society to stymie any hopes of revolution in the organized workforce?
Perhaps, but I think the broad misconception among the industrialists, as it were, is that the proletariat wants to rise up at all. Indeed, I think if we take moral authority as a topic. Sorry, what are you doing with your hand?
Just adjusting the focus.
I see, even though your hand is not on the lens.
Don't worry about it.
I see. I see. Where was I? Yes, moral authority. I think if the 1%, even though that phrase, really it should be the 3.5%, if you've read my first book, the 3.5%. I think if they just merely stepped up and offered an explanation, a Christian explanation, as to why they fence off their property, I think people would merely be a lot happier in their day-to-day lives.
So do you have any historical evidence for the relation of Western Christianity to workers' movements and the suppression thereof?
No, because I don't believe in history as a concept.
Of course. So could you care to talk to us about the refractory period in cultural change, as you so describe in, I forget, was that your second or third book?
That was my 3.5 book, co-authored with my good friend Rebecca Sneed.
Of course.
Well, this idea of a refractory period is very much a sort of work in progress idea. I think with cultural movements, it's really impossible to describe them as they go on. And so the refractory period was sort of a way to quantify a sense of looking back upon past generations and past movements. And so I think it cannot be described accurately as an idea. It's more a problematic set of theories.
For sure. Could you describe what some of those theories are?
Yes. For instance, the theory that pee is stored in the balls is a very important idea to this sort of setup of the refractory period of cultural consciousness. You'd have to ask Professor Sneed. She was much more driving force behind this idea than I. But I think, to paraphrase her writing, the refractory period is simply a reflective period.
I understand. And so how does that relate to this concern over history in general? How can we observe cultural movements to have a necessary period of gestation or waiting before they are to inevitably rear their ugly heads again, if while simultaneously not giving any not giving any heed to the idea of history?
Well, that is simply as the Lord God, through whom all things are possible, has commanded it to be.
Of course. Any other thoughts?
No.
Wonderful. Well, it's been great to have you on the show, Professor.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
I learned nothing from the professor's diatribe, and more importantly, I became intensely disturbed, worried about the implications of his statements on public property, private property, and the nature of the repression of our desires, the id, the ability to go and explore freely, to roam, as it seems often to me like we were intended to do as people. At what step in creating a society did we restrict our free and naturalistic movement? And for the answer to this question, I had to turn to a more general history.
I am the voice of Ronald C. Scott. My skin is goop, my brain is rot. It appears as though I have been shot by an errant fissile omniglot. Dunkin' Donuts, cheddar cheese, I will put you on your knees and teach you manners, Q's and P's, and you'll crave for my apologies. The parental class is over, and the fathers all are one. The insurance was avoided, and that's how the West was won. I am the voice of Ronald C. Scott. Advertising, chuckled coal, Chuck E. Cheese, and corporate moles in space. Even the dead are hot. Kellogg's Frosted Tasty Eats, mini treat, nice to eat. Kellogg's frosting on the grass of the graveyards in your past. Street sweepers in the moonlight sweep the streets for everyone. Rusty gears arrest our ankles, and that's how the West was won. I am the voice of Ronald C. Scott. I am fastened to this very spot, and just in case the world forgot, its fiber drains and then is caught. The products swimming in the lane, the rain from Spain is mainly plain. The kings will rule, the people slain will humbly ask for the refrain. From esports to Benghazi and sweet Priscilla in the sun, the feast of flesh is Sunday, and that's how the West is won. I am the voice of Ronald C. Scott, dead and gone, forgotten not, mourning for the wars he fought and boiled in a chamber pot. The grave is cold and dusty too, a lonely rock in Malibu. Who is he, and who were you, before the chasm ate you too? You can tell someone to do it, and he'll shoot him with a gun. Ronald Reagan, Johnny Cash, and that's how the West was won.
With my historical studies again proving fruitless as to the answer to my questions, I turned to something more spiritual, something more innate to the human experience. Perhaps love held the answer I sought. I love you. 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 I love you.
I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. Why? All I love you. 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 I love you.
No, that didn't feel right either, but I continued my spiritual journey into the woods to discover what it had in store for me. I came at once to a great river and attempted, despite all odds, to cross it. However, I was fully clothed and it proved very cold, and so, as you'll see, I soon gave up. It would seem perhaps that some rivers are unfordable.
Or perhaps not. All rivers are fordable, my children. And here I am. The river rushes as it is wont to do, as it has always done before, and will always continue to do. Here, in nature, man can truly be free. However, you can only be free in nature if you are free to get into nature. Thus we get to the second point of the argument. Nature, joy, peace must come at a premium, either by location where you live or by paid access thereto. Come on over, I'll show you what I mean.
In the river, all things are made neutral. In the river, all things are made one. Do not mind the sensations you feel around you. They are merely temporary. Tricks played by your mind to keep you in the physical realm. Pay them no mind. Forge ahead. Continue onwards. Go forwards. Continue to move ahead. There is no room for skepticism. There is no room for doubt. In times such as these, we must be of one mind, of one body. In times such as these, enlightenment is crucial. In times such as these, there is no room for dissent or hatred. We must create our character and move through the world in accordance with its values, morals, and beliefs. The bugs are also an illusion. Pay no attention to the flies. Pay no attention to what they feast on. These are all mere tricks. If you do not pay attention to them, they will subside and you will continue. Pay no attention to the leeches. I've heard that they're good for you, actually. Pay no attention to the stagnant filth, which with every step you wade deeper into. Pay no attention to the grim specters which appear at the periphery of your vision. They are also false. The river is a good place. The river is home. A new home. Not the type of home that you are born in, but the home that you grow to create for yourself. That's what the river is. The river does not welcome with open arms anybody who attempts to access its enigmatic pleasures. To truly profit off of the experience of the river, you must create your own destiny. You must not be afraid. To be cleansed. You must shed all worry. You must shed all doubt. You must shed all fear. Turn around now. You must not fear the rapids. With faith as your key, you can walk right through them.
Gee, I sure wish I could get to that bench over there with an accompanying trash can so that I can throw away my trash. However, I simply cannot, because there is a sign that says private property, no trespassing. Whatever am I to do, stuck in this liminal spot between the public park behind me and the private property in front of me? Now that my friends are gone, I can continue talking. Rocks are on the ground. My feet are on the ground. This does not make my feet rocks, nor does it have anything, frankly, to add to my argument, which is that it sure does suck that I can't sit on that bench and throw away my trash because this fence separates the private from the public. I certainly wouldn't want to be private. I hope you agree. We can be public together. The rustling makes me afraid. I think that in the bushes there might be people who will ask me to leave. There they are now. I'm wondering if similar noises make you guys at home feel similar emotions. Be sure to tell me so that we can further research and develop this issue. Voices are getting louder. That means it's probably my time to leave. That being said, it is the mere ability that I am able to stand here and have a camera in front of my face that gives me the courage to do some of these things that I would not normally do if I were not being filmed. However, in this case, the proverbial gaze is merely myself. I am a mirror, or at least am attempting to mirror my own fantasies, desires, and pleasures by standing here in front of this fence at the intersection between public property and private property I address an unseen audience. In reality, I address only myself and fear that soon I may be found out. The judgment I feel from the cyclists on the road is immense. The judgment I feel from the hypothetical structure behind me. There is a literal structure, but the significance of offense is always much more weighty, powerful than the reality of offense. For instance, if I am to turn the camera to the left and to the right, and even to the center, you would see that there are many ways that I could perhaps subvert this genius design and go sit on the bench and throw away my trash. However, I do not, out of fear. Because although this society plagues me, I must force myself to act within its rules so that I may be fulfilled. Frankly, I think that's enough for today.